The biggest risk takers, though, are humans, like Elliot here, because he's a test pilot who volunteers to put his life on the line. The last time I saw Elliot was right after that crash, way back in 2016. He sat for an interview.
To be the pilot for that test, they're not skills you can just go get.
He even took me flying.
There's a couple of big bumps out there today. Woo, yeah.
He never let on that it was his first time back in a plane after the wreck, or that he was still wounded and uneasy. Because I'm a jerk, I asked Elliot to take me to the scene of the crash, the famed Mojave Boneyard, where planes go to decompose. Tell me about this crash. You were testing out a plane, and tell me what happened.
So this opportunity came out where a small jet engine company was looking for somebody to debut their engine. We flew the airplane successfully 2 times, and then the 3rd flight, we had an engine failure, and I ended up weaving my way between the tails of the 747s here in the Boneyard until I could find a soft spot to put it down. At the end of the day, the engine that failed was a prototype engine, so I knew the risks that I was getting into.
You walked away, but you must have been shaken for a while after that.
Yeah, obviously, if you don't walk out of that and think about what you're doing with your life, you probably have problems. But I was flying again within a few days of the accident and testing airplane. I had another major incident in an airplane, an emergency landing within a week of that one. So get back up on the horse.
Have you considered shirtless beach volleyball?
Not till this moment.
Unlike many test pilots with military training, Elliot is actually an engineer who's had to work his way up into the test pilot game.
So there's basically 2 paths to flight tests. One is you go be a fighter pilot, and then you go from fighter pilot to test pilot. The other is you go spend 10, 15 years with a small company, and you work your way from an engineer to make that jump to the left seat.
I just love this about your story, man. So you've got the guys you see in Top Gun, and that's kind of who you're competing against. Somebody's got a new plane, and then you got to go up against the Top Gun guy and explain to these people why you should fly the plane.
Yeah, fundamentally. Remember, we lost a program to an astronaut. I never even made a counterpoint, right? But now that I've been in this business for a while, the science as an engineer is fascinating, right? You go and learn something in school, you can read it in a book, you can see how the equation works, but until you can feel it in your hand and see how that all adds up to whether it is or is not what you want from an airplane, that's a whole nother level. And as a test pilot, I've flown 80 different kinds of airplanes successfely. I've got 11 first flights.
So that means you're the first person to take the machine up.
Yeah.
Mojave's had this mythic status, of this is where you come to do the most groundbreaking work and to push machines to their edge. Is that still the case?
I think there's no question that Mojave is absolutely on the radar right now. There's the whole world's watching to see what comes out of Mojave. This is very desolate land where you can play and do things you can't do other places on the planet. And it attracts big ego dudes, frontal lobe kind of guys, and to be able to get a bunch of smart dudes pointing in the same direction, go make something fly that doesn't look like it should, that's a hard thing. And it's very rewarding when it works, and when it doesn't, you can spend an eternity thinking about how it all added up against you.
And so here we are in 2020. A pandemic, fires in the West, the overall madness of a year which feels more and more like a work of experimental Dadaist art. And yet somehow I end up in the back of a pickup truck, driving through a plane graveyard during a Mojave sunset. It's not perfect, because perfect can't exist right now. But I gotta tell ya, it ain't bad.